Waitress feeds twins in silence. Months later, 4 SUVs stop at the door of the restaurant. Have you ever noticed when something strange happens, but silently? Something that doesn't scream, doesn't ask for attention, but insists on appearing. Every day, exactly the same way. That's how it all started. It was an ordinary Tuesday in the forgotten heart of rural Kansas. Jenny, the waitress at Rosie's Diner, arranged the cutlery as she had for years, not expecting any surprises from life. But that morning, when he looked up from the tray, he saw something different. 2 girls, equal, sitting side by side at one of the corner tables. They didn't speak. They didn't ask for anything. They just shared a glass of water, with their small hands clasped on the table as if the world outside was too big to face alone. Her braided hair badly tied up, and the backpacks on her back with broken zippers told a story without words. Jenny frowned. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did they always appear at the same time, always in the same way, as if they were part of the set? It was as if time stopped when they arrived. Have you ever seen someone who doesn't seem to want to be seen? They looked all around. Every movement, every customer, every dish that came out of the kitchen, like they're trying to learn or remember. But the strangest thing is that no one else noticed. Maybe it was because they didn't make noise. Maybe it was because they were too small to bother. Or maybe because the world has become accustomed to ignoring what it does not understand. But Jenny saw it. And the scariest thing is that once you see, he can no longer unsee. Why would 2 children come alone to a restaurant every day without saying a word? Why did they seem so used to silence? These questions began to echo in her head like muffled bells. And in that instant, without knowing it, Jenny had opened the door to something that would change not only the lives of those girls, but so did hers. And what came next, no one could predict. That morning, the rain was falling as if the sky was trying to wipe something out of the world. The streets were empty. The puddles reflected the lights of the flickering sign of Rosie's Diner, and Jenny felt that strange silence that only cold water can bring. But punctually, at 7:16 a.m., the 2 appeared again. Soaked up to their ankles with the same thin coats, their hair sticking to their foreheads and their eyes. Still attentive. Still hungry for something that wasn't just food, Jenny noted. And this time, not just with his eyes. Something inside her seemed restless. An old impulse, perhaps instinct, perhaps memory, caused her to pick up an extra plate in the kitchen. 2 toasts, a little red jam in the corner, as if forgetting to take something off the table. Have you ever done something without knowing exactly why? Like your hands knew before your mind? That's how she did it. No words, no looks. He just left the plate there, pretending to be distracted, as if it were part of the routine. The girls didn't move for a while. They remained motionless, as if they were waiting for a trap, or maybe as if that was too good to be true. The smaller of the 2, the one with the bracelet made of frayed thread, was the first to reach out, with hesitation, as if fearing being reprimanded. She broke the toast in half and, in a gesture that broke Jenny inside, handed half of it to her sister. They shared the food the same way they shared the glass of water, in silence. With reverence. Have you ever seen someone eat like they're trying not to be noticed, and at the same time, trying not to forget that flavor? The next morning, there they were. Same place, same time. But something had changed, not in what they wore nor in what they said, but in the eyes. A trace of confidence, small, barely noticeable, now shone between her long lashes. Jenny got the message. It wasn't just toast, it was respect. He was careful, and without realizing it, she began a ritual. Because sometimes, the smallest of actions is the first step to break the greatest of silences. And when the silence breaks, forgotten stories begin to beg to be told. And that story, it was just beginning. Not everything that is beautiful to the eye is welcome to the world. As the days passed, the twins kept coming back. And the dish? I was already waiting for them, always with something simple, a piece of toast, a scrambled egg, sometimes even a small glass of milk. Jenny never asked their names, and they never did. But there was a silent language being written every morning, but the world around him began to notice. First, there were the looks, muffled whispers on the restaurant's padded benches. That couple who always ordered pancakes with syrup exchanged, who whispers whenever they saw the girls. The old woman in the corner frowned indignantly, and even a delivery man kind of unintentionally blurted out, "These two don't eat. They only win. Is this charity, or are you using the kitchen as a shelter?" Jenny listened, but he did not answer. She knew that something invisible, but powerful, was brewing, and sometimes the invisible scares more than what can be named. But the comments were not limited to customers. On a Friday morning, the manager showed up earlier than usual. Blake, a thin, practical man with a spreadsheet always in hand, called Jenny to the counter. "Who are these girls?" he asked dryly, his chin pointing towards the twins' table. "Are you offering food free of charge?" Jenny hesitated. I could make up an excuse, but he decided to do what his heart had already decided long before. "I'll pay, with my tips." Blake sighed, uncomfortable. There were no rules against it, but also, there was no custom. Have you ever had to defend something that you don't even fully understand, but you know deep down that it's the right thing? Jenny continued. Every tip counted carefully at the end of the day. 3 coins for milk, 4 notes for bread. Sometimes he left with less than he entered, but he slept with a fuller conscience than his pocket. The comments persisted, but other looks also began to emerge, those of curiosity. From those who begin to wonder, why does she do that? Who are these girls? And the most important of all, what if I were in their shoes? Because when an act of kindness defies the logic of the world, it sparks questions. And questions, when they echo enough, they can become movement. The movement that Jenny had started, without knowing it, was now about to come out of anonymity. And deep down, the world was about to know the power of a silent choice. On Monday, Jenny prepared the dish as usual. Golden toast, a small portion of scrambled eggs, and a glass of warm milk. He put it on the corner table at exactly 7:16 a.m., and he waited. But the twins did not come. She looked at her watch, then the door, then again the watch. But the bank remained empty, untouched, as if time had frozen in that part of the restaurant. Still, she did not pick up the plate. He left it there, waiting. On Tuesday, the same thing. Same time, same food, same absence. The dish was chilling, but Jenny wouldn't give up. Customers commented. The manager rolled his eyes, and a customer in the back with a cell phone in her hand couldn't resist. She pointed the camera, laughed softly, and took a picture. In the caption, she wrote, "A garçonnette que alimenta fantasmas. Have you ever felt that something sacred has become a joke?" Jenny felt it. The post went viral before noon. Mocking comments began to arrive, absurd theories. People saying that she was crossing the line, that it was lack disguised as kindness. But Jenny kept on Wednesday, he repeated. The ritual. He adjusted the cutlery. He folded the napkin into a triangle shape, and he left the plate, even though he knew that there might be no one to eat him. But was it really for them that she did it? Or could it be that, on some level, that routine was the only thing that still made sense in such a noisy world? So hasty, so blind. Have you ever had to keep believing, even when everything around you tries to convince you to stop? Jenny didn't know where the girls were, but he knew one thing. While she was there, that table would not be empty. She would be reserved for hope. And hope, it is never wasted time. But that same day, someone unexpected was about to arrive, and what he carried with him, it would change everything. That night, Jenny came home with her uniform still smelling of stale coffee and rain. The soaked shoes were clattering on the wooden floor of the small apartment above the pharmacy, and the silence of the place seemed heavier than ever. She hung up her apron, lit the corner lamp, and sat down at the table where, years ago, her mother used to write. The brown-bound notebook was still there, aged with the ends folded but full of notes that had never been read carefully, at least not until now. Something inside Jenny pushed her to open that relic. There, between a cookie recipe and a crooked prayer with crossed-out words, there was a dusty page with a sentence highlighted in pencil, as if time had stopped touching there on purpose. Sometimes, breaking bread is all that keeps the world from falling apart. Jenny stopped. He read it again, and once again. Have you ever read such a simple sentence that it seems like it was written just for you, at the exact moment you needed it? She closed her eyes and suddenly remembered her mother. She remembered the times when she shared the last piece of cake with her sick neighbor. He remembered the coffee brewed for strangers on wake days. He remembered how his mother made kindness look inevitable. And in that instant, something in Jenny took hold. It didn't matter if others laughed. It didn't matter if no one else understood. It didn't matter if she never knew who those girls were or where they came from. What mattered was that she had bread to share, and that she now understood was more than enough. Have you ever felt like a memory embraces you, even when no one else does? That night, that's what happened. And while the world outside kept running, judging, posting and forgetting, Jenny remembered. She didn't need the answers. She just needed to continue being light. And when someone decides to be light, it doesn't matter what darkness comes after. It always illuminates something that no one else sees. It was on a clear morning when the sun finally came out again after weeks of rain that the unexpected happened. The clock struck 7:16 a.m., the time when Jenny, out of habit, had already placed the twins' plate on the corner table. The food was steaming, as always, the empty chair, as in the last few days, and her heart, waiting. But instead of the girls, what arrived was the muffled sound of thick tires cutting through the asphalt. Within seconds, the narrow street in front of Rosie's diner was taken over by 4 black SUVs. Dark windows, armored glass, and foreign flags fluttered discreetly on the sides. Customers stood up to look. Some ran to the windows, others took out their cell phones. The manager turned pale, but Jenny just stood still, because something inside her said, "This is because of them." The door of the restaurant opened with a creak that seemed to have been rehearsed, and through it entered a man in an impeccable suit, decorations on his chest and a leather briefcase in his hands. He didn't smile. He did not present himself. He just looked around, walked to the counter, and he asked in a firm voice, "Where's Miss Jenny Millers?" Time froze. The silence in the restaurant was so absolute that you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Jenny raised her hand, confused. The man approached, opened the briefcase, took out a letter sealed with a golden coat of arms, and placed it in front of her. This letter comes from the presidency of a foreign country, and it carries a request for gratitude on behalf of 2 minor citizens who were fed here. When no one else saw it, Jenny frowned, not understanding. Was it a mistake? But the man went on. He said he was there under diplomatic instructions, that the girls were safe, that a promise had been made before the death of someone very important. Have you ever felt that your simplest gesture, was it much deeper than you imagined? Jenny felt it, with force. The letter did not explain everything, but it said enough. It said that there was a story behind those 2 silent children, and that story, it began with bread, but ended with honor, and for the first time in years, everyone inside the restaurant stood to applaud Jenny. But her, she was still staring at the empty table, as if he were waiting for the real words, those that were yet to come. Because what that officer brought was just the beginning of the truth. The letter smelled of time. Thick paper, yellowed at the edges, and a signature at the bottom that seemed to have been written urgently. And love. Jenny read silently, her trembling hands clutching the open envelope in front of the counter. The restaurant behind her seemed to have disappeared. The sound of the dishes, the conversations of the customers, the buzzing of the street, everything faded as the words of the letter came to life. There was the truth. White, painful, unexpected. The twins were not alone by chance. They were the daughters of Amina K. Ndele, an African diplomat involved in humanitarian missions between war zones and refugee camps. A woman known for her quiet work in places where the world had already given, Amina had arrived in the United States for an emergency conference. He brought the girls with him because he didn't trust anyone else. But days later, on the way to Washington, he was in a car accident. The world recorded the tragedy as a diplomatic loss, but no one, absolutely no one, knew that two girls had stayed behind, silently, waiting for their mother's return. Jenny closed her eyes. The following words seemed to draw the air from his chest. "Before leaving," Amina told me, "if something happens to me, find the woman who gave bread to my daughters without ever asking for explanations. This woman will keep the world standing, longer than any embassy ever can." Have you ever been recognized for something you did, thinking that no one saw it? The letter was a request, not to make excuses, but of gratitude. The man in front of Jenny explained that the search lasted weeks. The twins, after finally being located, told only one thing: the toast woman, the one who didn't ask questions, and that's why the cars arrived, not with pomp, but with purpose. Jenny sat down. The tears fell effortlessly. She didn't know the girls' names, but he now knew the weight of the gesture he had with them. A gesture that crossed borders, hierarchies, and protocols, until it becomes something bigger than itself. Because sometimes breaking bread is not just kindness, it's a legacy. It is a promise fulfilled. It's a planted seed that blooms in silence. And at that moment, Jenny understood. She had sustained a world that was about to collapse, and so would be remembered. The following week, Rosie's diner was no longer the same place. Everything remained the same on the outside. The peeling beige walls, the sign flashing erratically, the smell of bacon and coffee in the air. But inside, something had changed, something profound, something that no one could see but everyone could feel. The manager, previously skeptical, gathered the employees one morning and, in a firm but choked voice, announced, "As of today, the restaurant has a new policy. Whoever it is, pay what you can, no one goes hungry." It was a shock, but no one questioned it, because everyone there had seen what happened to those girls. They had seen how a single choice, made with the heart, not the wallet, could change someone's destiny. And so the small restaurant, squeezed between a hardware store and a laundromat, became a symbol, not charity, but of humanity. It started to receive not only customers but people, families in difficulty, homeless youth, forgotten elderly, all welcomed, fed, and seen. Jenny, now respected by all, would do the same ritual again. He prepared the dishes calmly. He folded his napkins with care. But everyone noticed that, in his eyes, there was still an absence, a longing, until one day, months later, it happened. The doorbell rang softly, almost like a whisper, and there, standing at the entrance, they were, the twins, more grown-ups, dressed in new clothes, but with the same eyes, attentive, sweet, and full of world. They walked to the corner table. They sat in silence. Jenny watched them, saying nothing. I knew I didn't need to. They didn't eat. They just left a small package on the table. Inside, there were two things: a carefully folded napkin and a ticket. 4 words written in small but firm handwriting. "Thank you for seeing us." Jenny brought her hands to her mouth. The tears fell as before. But this time, it was different. It wasn't pain. It was gratitude. It was a closed cycle. Have you ever felt like you've been seen at the time when you needed it most, or rather, have you ever made someone feel seen even without saying a word? In that restaurant, in that corner of the city, 2 children were reminded that they belong, and a lonely woman discovered that silent love can cross the world and come back to thank you. Sometimes it's not what we give, but what we see. We live in a world full of voices, but so lacking in listening, surrounded by people running, judging, pointing, and almost never stopping. But there is one kind of power that needs no stage, no fame, no approval. The power to see the unseen. Jenny did not save the girls with money. She saved it carefully, with respect, with bread broken in silence. And maybe whatever is missing in the world. Because at the end of the day, the ones who change the course of the stories are not always the big ones. They are the good ones. And those who choose to be good. It never gets small. Now think, who is sitting at the corner table of your life waiting to be seen? Maybe it's closer than you think. If this story touched you in any way, don't let it go. Leave the like so that more people see the invisible. Comment below. I saw it. That's all. Let's show that the world is still full of people who choose to see. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because every week there are real or possible stories that remind us. Kindness is not weakness, it's revolution. And if you want to feel your heart burn once again, click now for the next video. A heartwarming story about a boy and a candle that lit more than one room. Ignited a soul. You won't come out the same.